Do you have questions about your health? Do you need to find out what's keeping you from feeling your absolute best? If so, your intuition has guided you to the right place. I am Dr. Charlize, and welcome to the Art of Healing podcast community. In this podcast, we explore all topics in health and wellness, from Reiki to functional medicine, energy medicine, chakras, and meditation. Join me every week for fresh new episodes that highlight healers, various healing modalities, and choose this as your opportunity to find what healing works best for you. If you want to learn more about me, simply Google at Dr. Charlize. Enjoy. Hello, and thank you so much for joining me for today's Art of Healing podcast. I am Dr. Charlize, and if it is my first time to meet you, nice to meet you. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. Thank you so much for joining me for today's episode. Our guest for today's episode is noted physician, world-renowned leader, and healer, Dr. Ibrahim Jaffe. Dr. Jaffe is a licensed medical doctor and world-renowned spiritual teacher who pioneered the field of medical spiritual healing, a deeply integrative approach that addresses the root of physical, emotional, and spiritual illness. Bridging Western medicine with Sufi spiritual wisdom, Dr. Jaffe has helped over 50,000 people worldwide, including celebrities, CEOs, and those on the brink of death, heal chronic conditions, awaken their hearts, and transform their lives. Dr. Jaffe was formerly an emergency room physician who turned into a spiritual guide, and he offers profound insights into how the heart, soul, and body are intimately connected. Dr. Jaffe is the co-founder of the University of Sufism and has trained thousands of healers, leaders, and seekers in the art of walking a path of love, peace, and divine presence. His work especially resonates with those who seek real healing when nothing else works. With Dr. Jaffe, he has many things to share with us today, but what I'm hoping we'll learn is about the 5 C's of inner truth, which are consciousness, connection, clarity, cultivation, and commitment. And you can start your journey with the 5 C's with Dr. Jaffe's program on his website, sufi.net. So if you check your show notes, I have the links there where you can get started. Yes. All right,
Right.
Dr. Jaffe. It is so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for being a guest. I'm honored. It feels like just a privilege to be in your presence.
Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you and enjoying your interview very much.
Thank you. To start us off, I'm just very interested that you are a licensed medical doctor, but you stepped above and beyond that role to study in depth alternative healing practices and traditional healing practices. And I've read about you, you've traveled the world, you've really put your heart and soul into your soul journey to share with the rest of us.
Mm.
So, can you give us an, a preview of some that led you on this path? What made you step away from, I believe, it was emergency medicine and step above and beyond that?
Well, I mean, before I was a doctor, I was in India. I had gone to India to study meditation and had kind of gone to different ashrams around India and was looking at just kind of exploring enlightenment more than anything. And during that time, I met some Hindu healers who were doing sort of Vedic healing on people. And it was really powerful and it was really interesting. And they were essentially doing kind of postures. They would do Hindu postures. And then somehow through the movements, there was a transmission of light that was being sent to the people and they were healing. So that was really kind of a wake-up call for me. Because as a doctor, what are we doing? We're doing lab tests and x-rays and then coming up with a decision. But here we're watching a whole nother way of healing. It was powerful.
Mhm.
So I decided to explore it more just because as a physician, my oath was to heal people. And when I looked around all the other doctors, we were simply basically saying, hey, our way is the best. It's the only way. It's the right way.
Mhm.
And that's it. And I kind of resented that because I had watched other forms of healing actually do things that we couldn't do. I decided what I felt as I was praying about it was that medicine and alternative medicine and spiritual healing all needed to come together because what we're really doing is trying to heal our people. The patients are the ones in need. And if Vedic healing is better than allopathic medicine, then we should probably go with Vedic healing, right? Because it's doing the job. And if we say, well, it's only in this system, then what we're doing is we're locking out all the potential healing for our patients. And for me, it just felt wrong. I just felt it was wrong. So I decided I was going to be the bridge.
How did your colleagues respond to you taking on this exploration? Like how did this timing work for you? Were you still practicing in the hospital and then doing this on the side, or did you just completely say I'm stepping away and starting this journey? And what was just my personal curiosity, because I'm a practicing physician as well. How did that go? What was that like?
Well, it started when I was still in my residency. So I was in the hospital doing the work and I was talked to the doctors about it. And essentially what I was told was shut up or get out. I mean, it was
Oh.
very, very clear. Shut up or get out. You either stop talking about it or we're not going to let you through your residency program.
Oh, that's juicy. Okay. Yeah, yeah, because for myself, this I don't know if I should say awakening curiosity, because I don't know that I've had an awakening, but my curiosity started, I was already in practice. So I was very much indoctrinated. I was very much internal medicine, and I was in practice for 13 years before any of the questions came up.
No.
The blessing for me was I didn't have the oppressive forces of being in training. So I was still, I'm trying to find this. I was still brainwashed enough in my training that I could get through just fine. But it was, yeah, I was an attending by the time. So that part was easier because I could explore on the side and I didn't have to talk. But you
Uh,
were actually talking to your attendings and talking to your trainees. And did any of them take positively to what you were saying or show any curiosity or just didn't
I
want to?
think out of the entire hospital, one. I mean, and I was I went to a Weiss Memorial in Chicago is where I did my residency, and we had, I don't know how many hundreds of doctors there, but only one was interested of the whole group.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So you have credited Sufi spiritual healing methods for helping individuals from around the world. Can you explain to us what is Sufism? Let's start with that and explain how that works with your healing modality. And also we need to tell the listeners your method and what it is. But what is Sufism? Let's start with that for those that
Okay.
aren't of us that aren't familiar.
Well, Sufi means purification or purity. So Sufism is a path of purifying the heart to come into God realization. Okay. And there are many what are called tarikas or groups out there throughout the world, probably thousands. And they're all a little bit different. But there are kind of some major ones that are holding, like I was trained in the Shadaliya Sufi Tarika, which has probably maybe 30, 40 million worldwide people who have learned. And it's a mystical path. It comes out of Islam. It is something, unfortunately, where traditional Islam has fought with Sufism for 1600 years. Sufism is about the mystical side, and unfortunately what happened is in most religions the mystical is taken out and it becomes dogmatic. So Sufism has been kind of the hidden mysticism, although today it's starting to come back again. We're starting to see a resurgence of it. But essentially Sufism was about the teachings of how to purify the heart so people could reach unity with God. Okay, and then unity with God is a form of enlightenment. Enlightenment is when the third eye opens into God. Maybe we'll start again.
Mhm.
Sufism comes from the Arabic word tasawwuf. And tasawwuf essentially means purity or purification. And it has to do with essentially what we call fana, or the annihilation of the ego, and the opening of the heart as it walks into the presence of God.
Okay.
Sufism really means purification of the heart. And if you look at when a person reaches what's called the unity, or what's called tawheed, the state of oneness, the heart breaks open into a state of realization of God, we call haq, the truth, and the person has essentially reached enlightenment. They've reached the oneness of God. It's a little different than Hindu enlightenment, where the Hindus essentially open the third eye and they have the enlightenment of the mind as it goes into God. But in Sufism, we work with the heart. And so instead of raising the Kundalini and then opening the third eye, which is what the yogic systems do, we essentially rotate the heart through a series of stations until the heart hits the same place. And then you open the entire system together. So you get kind of a broad entry into God.
Oh, thank you. That is a beautiful explanation. You've actually answered many questions I've had about many of these, but thank you so much. And you were saying something earlier, and yeah, I'll try to keep us on track, but you said Sufism came from Islam, but it's the mystical aspect rather than the dogmatic. And if you're comfortable, can you explain the difference to us between mysticism and 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 a dogmatic and what's dogmatic? What is the difference?
Okay, well, in all religions, what happens is you get initially kind of an enlightened or wise teacher that comes through, such as Moses for the Jews, Christ for the Christians, Muhammad for the Muslims,
Okay.
Buddha for the Buddhists, etc. Now, they're coming through, and when they come through, they are spiritually awake, and they're teaching from a very high enlightened place, and they're transmitting the reality of what they have experienced into their students at that time.
Okay.
And the students are essentially absorbing that and getting, sort of, I don't know what the word is, realized by that, I guess. And they're growing through their teacher. Now, once the teacher dies, that transmission generally is not so strong anymore. And over the years, even people who've been following it, it starts to go down and down and down and down, so that the transmission and that pure reality gets lost. And what you're left with is a series of teachings, but there's no reality behind them. The reality disappeared.
Mm.
So you see that, and then people codify it and say, okay, well, these are the practices that Christ did. These are the practices Muhammad did. These are the practices that Moses did. This is the laws that he taught. This is what they taught. They codify it. It becomes a dogma. This is what you do. But where's the spiritual side of it? What happened to it?
Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you. Another beautiful explanation. Thank you very much. So, your method and what took you on this path was fundamentally illness. And of course, you chose the path of being a physician initially because of illness. So, how does this method of healing and working with Sufism, spiritual healing, work with physical illness? So, what's the relationship there?
You're asking some really great questions, so thank you. Well, first of all, purification of the body, of the heart, of the soul, of the spirit is really the same. The process is this. The difference has to do with where the light anchors itself. So, for example, if somebody has their parents' love, so they're not getting the love from one of their parents, say the mother isn't
Mhm.
giving love, and so the child is crying because the natural state is for the mother to care and love for the child. But let's say the mother has, I don't know, bipolar or has alcoholism or some such thing. What ends up happening is the mother is not giving the love to the child, and the child's crying for the love. Okay. That experience of not being loved again and again wraps into the child. So let's say the first time at a young age, the mother doesn't give the love, the child's crying and crying and emotionally wounded. What happens to that wound? Well, it sits in the energy field, it sits in the light, and it anchors itself in some part of the field. Okay, and there's a whole science to that, which we could go into if you want, but
Mhm.
it anchors itself in the field. Okay, and mostly in love, it's the heart. Okay, now the next time the mom doesn't love the child, it wraps it. And the next time it wraps it, and the next time it wraps it. And so over, let's say, 10, 15 years as the child grows up, there's hundreds of wrappings of abandonment, of lack of love, of attack, of whatever the mother does that causes the child to harden up the field because now it's getting wrapped tighter and tighter and tighter. And the child's starting to say, I'm not loved, that there is no love, I don't have any love. That wrapping is the source of disease.
Okay.
Okay. And when that disease goes, it starts to travel into the body. When it moves and it hits the body, that's when you get physical illness.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. So, I mean, you're a physician, you know that, one of the major causes of death is heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
But why? Because we have forgotten how to love.
So this energetic field injury initially starts in your example as an injury, but then it's a repetitive assault. This would start as lack of love. So what was a small injury in the energy field then gets wrapped. I'm envisioning sort of a scarring process, maybe injury and then scar and then injury and then scar. And then so much so that then it can actually manifest physically.
Exactly. That's right.
Oh, okay.
Now,
Okay. So,
sometimes, it is handed down lineage. So it's not
mhm.
only injury, because if you have a lineage issue, it can be handed down from generation to generation. So,
Mhm.
it doesn't always happen like that, but that's the general format of it.
Okay, okay. And that's a beautiful explanation. I love the way that you described that because it was easy to envision. I could even see sort of what I would think sort of the heart chakra area, sort of. And that's kind of where it develops. And then as this person grows into an adult, now this is almost like a solid mass of pain. So where could it'd have to go somewhere almost, right? Like it'd have to, yeah.
Yeah. And
Oh, that's a
actually,
beautiful explanation. Yeah.
I mean, if you look at, for example, the arterial system of the heart, and you look at where the atherosclerosis actually blocks up the arteries, you'll see that's the exact point where that particular wound hits. So all those
Okay.
blockages are separate woundings that are actually, they're slightly different, similar, but different because they hit different artery systems. But actually the body is reflecting the wounding of the emotional, psychological, and spiritual nature.
Wow. Thank you so much. I love that explanation. So let's discuss your method of healing. So I have that Sufi spiritual healing and APIRTB. Just can you explain to us what is your method that you are teaching others and sharing with others? Let's start with that.
Okay, well, my system developed over about 35 years. Okay, so
Mm,
when I was in medical school, I was practicing Vipassana, which is a form of Buddhist meditation. And what I would do is I would simply watch. And so as I was with patients, I would be, let's say, my first one was actually somebody with pancreatitis. And he came in with pain in the abdomen, but I was watching the subtle worlds as I would in meditation. So as I was sitting with him, I went into meditation. And all of a sudden, I saw something like a twisted yellow light that was off the pancreas about 2 feet. And that was
okay.
actually the first time I'd actually seen disease in the energy field.
So you were with the patient, did you see this in your mind's eye, or were you actually able to visualize it with the patient lying in the bed?
I think it was a combination of both.
Combination.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was like I was really seeing, I had my eyes closed, but I could, in my imagination, I could see the patient. And yet, as clear as I'm looking at you, I saw this twisted light kind of dancing in the field. And I said, "Oh, what is that?" And I realized that that was the pancreatitis. So I thought, so that became for the next 4 years, actually, I think I was a first year resident when that happened. For the next, or second year, for the next few years, what I did is every patient that came in, I would do the regular medical workup.
Yeah.
But then I would meditate to look at what was the energy dynamics that was going on in the patient simultaneously.
When in no, we're talking about method, but and I am completely fascinated because I recall my residency days. And I tell you what, I didn't take time to meditate. That was I love that. How did he have? Because I would be in such a panic myself. Now, I could remember questioning the just why was there so much suffering? Because for those listeners that teaching hospitals typically are where your sickest patients will be. That's just how it's going to be. So it's teaching hospitals for a number of reasons. So you tend to see, and it may have been the same for you, but in my practice lifetime, the sickest I saw were when I was a resident. So my thing, I would wonder like, why are people so sick? But that's amazing that in the midst of everything, you would stop and meditate and open your mind's eye. That's incredible. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. As you were a resident doing this, how would you support your studies? Of course, the medical part you had to do, but then how would you learn from what you were seeing in these energy fields in patients? Because it's overwhelming because you're still a resident too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was something that just kind of developed over time as I started watching more and more illnesses. I started to see patterns. That there were patterns of the way light would show up connected to, at the time, the chakras. I didn't really understand the chakras fully, but I recognized that there were love showed up over the heart. Pancreatic cancer would show up over the pancreas. It would be yellow, but when it was cancerous, it turned black. When it wasn't yellow, when it wasn't turned black, it hadn't moved into cancer.
Hmm.
When somebody with Alzheimer's had a particular pattern that was over their mind,
Mm.
and then I would look at the pattern, and it would be squiggly and kind of torturous, very much similar to what happened to the neurons in Alzheimer's. So I started seeing
Mm.
these relationships, and as time went on, it just started to become clear to me that the energy the body was a metaphor for the light, and the light was a metaphor for consciousness, and that what we needed to do was clear the consciousness to clear the light to clear the body.
That's amazing. As you were evolving in your training and in your practice, did you get to a point where seeing the light body and the energy would precede the diagnostic and the cognitive part, or would they just go together?
No, no, that was actually what was starting to, as time went on, I would actually find the light before it manifest. So, for example, I was teaching in Dusseldorf, Germany, one time to a bunch of doctors, German doctors. And as I was looking at this one doctor who was maybe 33, maybe, I looked at him, and in the field, there was this twisted energy around his testicle. Now, I wasn't looking at it. I mean, I was looking at his field, and I wasn't looking at his testicle directly. I was just kind of looking in the field, and here was this light.
Mm-hmm.
So I got concerned about it, and I talked to him. I said, "Look, I said, there's something going on down there. Is that right?" From the way it looked, I assumed it was cancer, but I didn't want to say anything
Hmm.
because I didn't want to create problems for him. But I said, "Just
Absolutely. Yeah.
take care of it." And he got really pissed at me. He started yelling at me, and how dare you look at me, and how do you look at my testicle, and who do you think you are,
Yeah.
and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. I said, but be careful because there is something going on. This would be the time to take care of it before it gets into the body.
Yes.
And he told me essentially where I could go. So, and it was not very nice, I have to say.
No.
Anyways, about 7 years later, he calls me up crying. And he says, "Oh, Dr. Jaffe," he said, "I just want you to know I just had my testicles removed. I had cancer that spread to both testicles, and it was malignant. And there was no other option but to remove them. And I just wanted to call to apologize to you
Oh.
because you were right. And if I had listened to you, I probably would have my testicles today. And I'm really sorry."
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I've found as well for myself that probably the most difficult to approach would be physicians. Why that is, I don't know at this point, and maybe I'll learn over time, or I'll learn from you. But I have found that that group of individuals can be. Maybe they're hurting the most. I'm not sure, but I know that physicians are the most difficult. I take Reiki clients, and I know that if it's a physician or similar healing type that's coming to me, I anticipate that those can be very difficult, or yeah, just very the most difficult for whatever reason that is. You may have some insight on why that is, but
I think we are, as physicians, we're programmed. There's clearly a programming going on. I don't know where it comes from directly, but I know when I got out of my residency, I remember, even though I was seeing auras and working with all this stuff, I remember I walked out and somebody said to me, "Oh, you can treat that with vitamins." And and I went nuts. I was like, "What? Vitamins? Are you out of your mind?" I started yelling at them, and I was like, "What? Where is this coming from?" It was in me, and I didn't even know it had gotten into me.
uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's our brainwashing programming. I've got to find a better term. I've been working on that. Yes, yes. Yeah, I've got to work on a better term for that. Yeah, it's definitely there and it's very dense and it takes years. Now for myself, I was older. I was already in practice. So for me, that journey was gentler because a lot of these explorations I could take without having to share. I could still do my job and even join communities where I could learn but
Mhm.
not have to feel that. So my heart goes out to you having gone through that. That would be very difficult as a resident to start asking those questions. Attendings aren't going to be open to that. So, oh my goodness.
No, it was definitely tough, but in a long time, everything was perfect. It built strength in me to be able to bring through a message that was needed. And you kind of have to, like anybody, you got to cut your teeth on something. And I think that
Mm.
that was where it started for me, like how to face that type of understanding. Now, I think honestly, I just recently was working with somebody with lung cancer in one of the main hospitals. I won't say which one, but a major, well-known hospital. And what happened in there was actually really startling. What we were seeing, I mean, I got my medical degree in 1983, and what I saw today, or yet just this last couple of weeks ago, 25, it has progressed. The level of what I saw in there was much worse. People were questioning it back where I was. Now it was like literally going after a patient who wanted alternative health simultaneously, and they really went after him and his wife full on, and I would say actually led to his death. And it was, I mean, I'm still kind of sitting with it, but I was shocked by what happened.
Oh my gosh. So you have an institute and you have a training process. Can you share with the listeners if they are interested in learning more about your technique, if and who is a candidate to be a part of your training and the next steps?
Okay, well, we essentially, the Institute of Spiritual Healing is part of the University of Sufism, and we're out in Santa Barbara, California now.
Okay.
And there's three groups we tend to work with. One are people that are really just seeking to reach enlightenment and unity and are looking for a very, very good path to get there. So many people who've studied different religions say that there's only two complete paths, they say, on the planet, and one of them is Sufism. So Sufism is a complete path that reaches to the complete realization of unity and oneness. So that's that group. The second one are healers like yourself. And that's actually, in a way, my favorite because I like most working with training physicians and healers and doctors
Hmm.
to work because I think I don't know, you're just one doctor can reach thousands of people in a year and
Hmm.
change thousands of lives. So training people like yourself is really where my heart's at. And then and the third group are the actual people that are either are sick or having problems. And we work across the board, and we like to work with the physicians and we like to work with the psychiatrists and the psychologists. We don't try to do it separately. We try to work together, finding hopefully people that are open. But people come in and they have disease, we'll work with them. If we can, we'd like to bring their doctors on board or their healers or whoever it is. So it's a group process. We find that the best. And then our work is to get to these root issues and these energetic patternings to release them. And not only release them, because that's the thing that people think that that's the end of healing, but healing actually isn't just releasing patterns. Healing is releasing patterns, but then replacing them with divine light.
Hmm.
So you
Hmm.
have to really do both.
Okay. 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 And I understand that you have, I believe is this a YouTube series? The five C's, of inner truth, consciousness, connection, clarity, cultivation, and commitment. And correct. So I know this is either a program or YouTube. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, I think you can find that on YouTube. It's one of our introductory programs. What we're doing is kind of introducing people to the system. And the system is essentially how do you connect to God's light? Okay, and really knowing what that light is, because a lot of times we think we're connecting to it, but we're actually really connecting to an image that we project onto God. So how do we really not form a false image when we get to the true image of God and the true light? The second step is how that light finds the illness in the energy field. So if I looked at you, I might say, oh, well, it sounds like your issue is X, Y, and Z. But when I bring the divine in, it might say, no, that's not even accurate. The issue is A, B, and C. It's in a whole different part of the body. You're in the wrong place.
Mhm.
So the divine is a very different form of guidance than our own intuition. For me,
Oh.
I used to trust my intuition. Now I recognize my intuition is nothing compared to divine.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I kind of bow myself and I say, okay, I've got to be at the feet of God because God knows much more than I do. So that's the second step. Third step is how do we purify it? How do we understand it and purify it? That's the clarity piece to get clear what's going on in there. For example, breast cancer is a big one today, but it took me a while to work it out. But breast cancer is almost always about betrayal of love. So if a woman gets betrayed or she betrays, can go both directions, but where there's betrayal of love, that's the foundational source of breast cancer.
Mm, yeah. Yep. I am trying not to let my mind go into the rabbit hole because I'm still interviewing you, but yes, of patients and as well as personal encounters with women that have survived breast cancer. Yeah, that's right on. It does seem like there's typically a story that's around it and then it comes. Because I'm thinking like in practice when I've had patients I've had for several years and it's with breast cancer because we have our protocol. Every woman's going to get screened for breast cancer so often. Here it is. But when you really start to dig into it, because we're told breast cancer has no symptoms. It's going to come on and it has no symptoms, and you don't know why it just happens. But when you start to really dig, it's not occurring that way. There's a story that comes all around it, and then it appears and the times might not make sense to our human brains, but yeah, I that's profound what you said. Yes, yes.
So as a physician or as physicians, we have to do the mammograms and the CT scans and all that stuff,
Hmm.
MRI. But really, at the end of the day, if we don't heal the place where they've been betrayed or their husband cheated on them or something like that, if we don't heal that, then what ends up happening is a person's breast cancer generally returns because you haven't really healed that. You've taken out the initial tumor, but what about the source? It continues to create toxicity in the system, and it will generally return after a period of time. Usually, we know what 3, 5, 10 years it shows up again.
So, Dr. Jaffe, I am going to make sure that the listeners have the contact information for your courses, your program. I see that we've got a phone number where the listeners can find out more. So, I will make sure to put all of that in the show notes. Any final words of wisdom that you would like to leave us with?
Well, I think the most important thing is to know if you can learn to connect to the divine light, and really access it. And that's done through really surrendering to it and opening to it. Miracles happen. We see them frequently. And sometimes it's instantaneous, but most of the time it's a slow melt. The light of the divine will slowly melt the disease away. And my experience is almost all diseases can be healed. Almost all of them. Given the time and work, and people have to work at it, but it's not like don't think because you have a disease you're locked into a life of suffering. You actually can really change it.
That's beautiful. It has been an honor to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I was just reflecting that right before you came on that it's just wonderful to have a podcast. It's sort of like this antenna that opens up, and then sure enough, an angel like you comes along and it's a blessing. So thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Jaffe.
My pleasure, and I really enjoyed getting to know you, and your questions are so honest and you're seeking so sincerely. It's beautiful to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jaffe. Thank you so much for joining during this episode of the Art of Healing podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a review. Also, you can check your show notes to find out how to get a copy of this and future episodes emailed directly to your inbox, available to listen to anytime. Finally, if you have questions or wish to connect to me, check your show notes to find out how we can get connected and find out how I can be of service to you.